I guess we'll kick off then, Ollie, coming to you. We've kind of been through beforehand and identified some needs to talk about. The first and foremost being running back. A lot of people not really expecting the Dolphins to address that in free agency, and I think they were proved correct there. We brought in Malcolm Brown as kind of a backup, and it feels like there's still a glaring hole on the roster for a running back in the first few rounds. Everyone's kind of pining for Najee Harris, and Lee's already grinning because he's going to make the case there. But is there anyone on your side who you think might be like a better fit for the Dolphins, or what are you kind of looking for a running back to start with, maybe?
It was interesting that you mentioned Chris Carson, because there was, for the longest time, it did seem that the Dolphins were going to get that deal done and bring in Chris Carson to address that running back need. So you're right, there is a huge need at running back, and among several others. But I'm afraid I'm with Lee. I'm probably Najee Harris's biggest fan. There's not a lot that the guy can't do at the running back position, and you talk about, we talk about running backs and how they're valued in the NFL, and you shouldn't waste a first-round pick on a guy at the running back position. But for me, you're not wasting a pick on a guy like Najee Harris, because he does so much more than just run the rock. You know, the guy can effortlessly catch out the backfield. He's a big, strong guy, but people overlook his footwork. He's nimble. He's got athletic ability for days. You know, you look at some of the hurdle moves and spin moves that the guy can pull off. For me, he's literally the best running back prospect in this draft by a long, long way. We recently did put together our top 300 big board for Pro Football Network, and Najee Harris is my 10th overall player on that big board. I think that highly of him. We talk about Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Matt Jones and everything on that Alabama offense, but I think without a guy like Najee Harris, that offense isn't what it was last year. Maybe they still win the national championships. They've got depth with guys like John Mechie, but Najee Harris is, for me, the guy that keeps that offense running. If you want to look later on down the draft for a running back, you're looking at, for me, a guy like the Dolphins they're in a great position because they've got 8 draft picks, but they've also got a massive gap between their 4th round pick and those 2 7th round picks. And that makes like addressing needs and ascertaining value quite difficult. I look at a guy like Khalil Herbert or Ramondre Stevenson, who are really interesting running backs. And Ramondre Stevenson in particular didn't have a great pro day for Oklahoma, but he's a guy who is really, really strong in the running game. You just don't know if they're going to fall somewhere in between that 4th and 7th round pick. Look at a guy like Elijah Mitchell out of Louisiana if you're looking at a really late round guy for one of those 2 7th round picks. I ran a mock for the Dolphins last night where I put Travis Etienne in the early 2nd round. I think that would be a great value and a great fit there. Apparently it wasn't, according to some guy on Twitter, but that's what you get for putting your opinions out there on Twitter. But I don't think you can go wrong with selecting Najee Harris at 18, personally.
Nice. And Lee, just before we press play, we kind of said how soon is too soon to draft Najee Harris. Is 18 where you're looking to get him? Are you kind of hoping he falls a bit below that and try and trade up or pick him up at 36?
Yeah, so interestingly, I've been part of a mock draft the last couple of days and been discussing it with a fellow who's got a podcast called Kadeem Simmons. He's got a Dolphins podcast over here. Check him out. He's awesome. And he was saying to me, he felt that 18 was a bit high for Najee Harris. And I completely get it. And I understand people's reluctance to take a running back in the 1st round, especially kind of like in the middle of the 1st round. But also, we didn't see him getting past Pittsburgh. So the question, how high is, where do you think the next place is that he goes? To be honest, if he's on the board at 18 and the Dolphins don't take him, I don't see him being there when they get to their 1st, 2nd round pick. So that means it's not too high because you want to get the guy you want. I think for me, the Dolphins work on a little bit of a different playbook to everybody else. They're going to select their guys, and it's not necessarily about perceived value. It's this is what he is for us. This is the fit he is for us and our team. So we rank him that way. The other thing for me, why I'm absolutely comfortable taking a running back in the 1st round is everyone's worry is about the second contract for a running back and about paying these guys big money. Well, I want a 5th-year option on a contract because I want to be negotiating after 4 and not after 3. As simple as that. If you want to move on after 4, fine. Like, let him walk and move on. But, I just think if you wait to the second round, you're just losing a year possibly at a cheaper rate.
Yeah, just on that as well, talking about Najee Harris, I think people forget that he spent the first couple of years at Alabama as part of a rotation. He hasn't got that same wear and tear on him that and a lot of guys come out of college with. The star running backs have often played 3-4 full years of college football before they come into the NFL, and that decreases their value in terms of shortening the length of their career. But Najee Harris didn't have that. He was very much in the shadows until 2019, and then obviously he's had this excellent 2020 year. So where that contract value and that 5th-year option comes in, really, really critical point where Najee Harris is concerned.
Just want to pick up on something around position 18, where I'm with Lee, Ollie, in terms of if he's there at 18, it's a no-brainer. I personally have always been of the opinion that if there's a player you like and he's on the board when it's your pick, then select him, and position is kind of irrelevant in that respect. But what happens if somebody like Lee mentioned Pittsburgh, who are also in the market for a running back? And I think and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've got a history of trying to trade up in the draft to select their players. What do you envisage Pittsburgh looking to jump 18? And if so, what do you think the Dolphins should do to respond to that? Should they in turn try and counter and actually think about drafting him higher?
It's a difficult one. Yeah, for sure. Pittsburgh are a big player where Najee Harris is concerned. But let's not forget, Pittsburgh have got a whole number of needs. They've lost the centre Marquise Pouncey, the Alejandro Villanueva at left tackle is a guy who's looking like he's probably on his way either out or out after a year. Pittsburgh have got a lot of needs, and they're a team for me that rather than having Najee Harris circled, I've got a guy like Texas tackle Samuel Cosme, Creed Humphrey, the centre out of Oklahoma. I don't foresee Pittsburgh making a massive jump up. I think any team that jumps up to grab a running back is probably going to be in for a lot of ridicule from their fan base, and probably they don't care so much about whether they get ridiculed or not. But when you're a team like Pittsburgh and you have got plenty of holes to fill, and for me, I see Pittsburgh as a potential landing spot in the second round for someone like Javonte Williams. I don't see them jumping up, and I think it's too difficult to predict that for the Dolphins in terms of, well, how do we counteract that? Because again, at 18, if Najee Harris isn't there, it's not the end of the world. You've got options there with pick 18 that potentially could be better long term for the organisation. But I'm just in love with that Dolphins Najee Harris fit at 18. Every mock draft I do, there's certain picks that I kind of pencil it in before I even pick the rest of them, and it's Najee Harris at 18 and Emir Smith-Marset to the Kansas City Chiefs in the 4th round. That's my other one. And they kind of already penciled in before I even crack on with the rest of it.
Interesting, man. I was going to say quickly, Lee, it feels to me like if we don't take Harris in the first, then I don't think he's going to get back to 36 where we are picking then. And after that, if you don't take Etienne or Williams there, I don't know, is it in your mind, is it worth taking a running back after that? Because we can't forget that we've got Myles Gaskin, who's had a fairly productive year, Salvon Ahmed, who was decent when called upon, and now we've brought in Malcolm Brown, who's shown that he can, be the every down sort of guy, if not the kind of heights that we're looking for. But is it kind of worth spending any draft capital after the first 2 rounds on a back for us this year?
If you think he's good enough, certainly. I don't think that if you think he's going to improve that room, without a doubt. I still think Ahmed was great, but let's be honest, if we went and started picking players off other teams, we wouldn't find it hard to replace him. And I think the same for Myles Gaskin. He's what you'd put in the category of serviceable. I don't know, if you put him up for a trade now, what do you think he garners? Like, how do you value that player? So, I think there's definitely opportunities depending on the player. Obviously, those are kind of the big names early on, and I am all for doing that. Like, my thing right now is just get talent for Tua. Like, to be honest, it sounds strange, but the 3rd pick, I'm kind of indifferent about. There's so many different ways you could go with that. But pick 18, that's Najee Harris pick. Hey, if they let me in charge, I'll be picking Najee Harris at 3. So, but you know what I mean? It's you've got plenty of options with the first pick. You could literally go anywhere, and I don't think you could go wrong. There's plenty of holes on the roster. There's plenty of I think we found last year one of the big things that was missing was depth. So I literally don't think you can go wrong pretty much anywhere. The only one that I think would make people lose their mind is if you took a quarterback, and that's a whole different conversation. Yeah, but I mean, I was also just coming back to what you were saying about, you know, not addressing it in free agency. I was still on the train that if you drafted Aaron Jones, I still would have taken Najee Harris, because Aaron Jones hasn't never been an every down back. So I want to offset that with a rookie, and I want to offset his contract with a rookie contract. So I was still in the camp of drafting any one of those 3 guys to offset a big free agency deal. So, I mean, I'm kind of running back. I think we have to come out of this draft with a running back.
Yeah, I think I don't think you'll find anyone that would disagree at all there.